President building. It is in a French style that came over during the 1920s called Beaux-Arts. Now this is a French style, so it's spelled Beauxarts, but it's pronounced Beaux-Arts. We're gonna pronounce it together. I'll say Beaux, and then you say Beaux. Beaux.
Oh.
Great job. Now we're gonna pretend we stubbed our toe and we're gonna go ah.
Ah.
Yeah, that's basically how you pronounce it. So how do you recognize this style? Well, when we come out under this bridge, look back at the London Guarantee and Accident building, you'll see Greek columns around the front door. This style draws a lot from Greek classical architecture. So when you see some Greek columns, you'll also want to look for this intricate carved stonework. So look back at the London Guarantee and Accident building. Near the top, you can see a lot of very intricately carved stonework. So when you see a building from around the 1920s, it's got some classical Greek columns, it's got a lot of carved intricate stonework, it just might be the French style of Beaux-Arts. Yes indeed, you guys are learning quick. All right, now we're going to talk about another style, one of my favorite styles actually. Here to our left, you can see the Tribune Tower. The Tribune Tower is this big gray thing here that has all this very fancy stonework up at the top. Look how thin that stonework is. This style is called Neo-Gothic. The Neo-Gothic style came around in the 1800s when we were building a lot of churches in this style. The churches, they wanted to feel light, airy, connected to the heavens. But to do so, they were finding that they had to make their walls pretty thin. And if your wall is thin and made of stone, well, it's got a lot of pressure on it, it might start to buckle outwards. And that's where we get the flying buttress. Up at the top of that building, there are smaller towers with very ornate arches that are connected to and supporting or buttressing the main tower. Flying buttresses allowed this style of architecture to feel light and airy and very intricate despite the fact that it was made of stone. It allowed the walls to be very, very thin and still supported. Now off to our right, we've got a tall white building with bold vertical lines. This building is, well, it was Big Stan. It was the Standard Oil Company's building, leading to its nickname Big Stan. But today it's called the Aon Center. It is the fourth tallest building in Chicago. And when it was built, it was clad with white marble imported from Italy. You can say wow if you want. Yeah, that's what people were saying, right? But then after 10 years in Chicago's crazy winters, that marble cracked and it started falling off that building onto buildings nearby. So at the cost of nearly $80 million, they replaced all that white marble with white North Carolina granite. Because you can't take marble for granted. You know? All right, enjoy that. There's more where that came from. Now off to our left, we've got the Sheraton Hotel. The Sheraton Hotel has one of the biggest ballrooms in Chicago. Its ballroom can seat 5,000 people. It's a lot of people. So, you know, if you have a big, big party, that's the place to have it. Off to our right, look for a building with wavy white balconies. That building is Aqua. It was designed by Jeannie Gang, and it's supposed to look like water cascading down the side of the building. And it kind of does look like that. Thanks to these wavy white balconies, which are supposed to represent the white, rocky outcroppings along the Great Lakes. Aqua, of course, meaning water. The building's very water-inspired. And Jeannie Gang, she loves building those wavy buildings. See if you can spot another of her wavy buildings just ahead of us. Yeah, this one off here to the right is the St. Regis, also designed by Jeannie Gang. This building is the third tallest tower in Chicago, but it's the tallest tower in the world ever designed by a woman. Pretty cool, right? That's our girl from Chicago, Jeannie Gang. And her work is so tall that the St. Regis is actually missing something. Look at its 83rd floor. It's not there. And that's because up there, this building deals with wind speeds up to 120 miles per hour. So to keep the building from wobbling in the wind, they took out the 83rd floor, creating a place where the wind can blow through the building. You know what that's called? A blow-through. Yeah, we're really good at naming stuff, and you'll see more of that later. Now the St. Regis is clad on the outside in turquoise glass.
He don't like it.
And that mimics the color of our beautiful river. In fact, our river is so beautiful that everyone seems to want to live here. To our left are Riverview 1 and 2. They're some of the more affordable options if you wanted to live on the river. To get a 1-bedroom, 1-bath in Riverview 1, it's only going to cost you $350,000, which for the river is a steal. And the homeowners association fees are only $950 a month, so, you know, affordable. All right, lots of people want to live on our river because it's a nice place now. But back in the day, that was not the case. In the early 1900s, we were having some problems with our river because we had a bunch of factories and we had a bunch of warehouses along the river. And way down south, we had the Union Stockyards where we made animals into meats. And we took all the leftover stuff from that process, all the grossest stuff you can imagine, and dumped it in the river. And the river was flowing towards the lake. And where did we get all our drinking water? The lake. So people were dying from drinking this nasty water from the river going into the lake. We said, what should we do? Should we stop dumping stuff in the river? No. We should reverse the flow of the Chicago River. And so we did. We dug a canal called the Sanitary and Shipping Canal that connected the end of our river to the Des Plaines River. And no one wanted us to open that canal, so in the dead of night in January of 1900, before they could stop us, we opened it. And it worked. Our nasty water started flowing away from our lake and down to St. Louis instead. And they sued us in court. But we fought the court case in Chicago, so we won. Only for us to get sued again, this time by Wisconsin and Michigan and Canada, who said, Chicago, now that you're taking water from the lake into your river, you're going to drain Lake Michigan. We actually lost that court battle. So we had to come up with a solution. Right now, our solution is just ahead of us. It's called the Chicago Harbor Lock. What the lock is it's a barrier between the river and the lake. But if a boat like ours needed to go onto the lake, they would open a door for us and we would go into the lock. They would close the door behind us and then they would slowly open the doors to the lake. 250,000 gallons of water would slowly flow from the lake into the lock, raising all the boats inside it 4 feet to the height of the lake, and then a horn would blow and those boats would go out onto the lake. And then if we were to come back, we would do the whole process in reverse. So you might be wondering, Jay, doesn't that mean lake water will still get into the river? Are we going to drain Lake Michigan? And the good news is that thanks to this lock controlling the flow of water from the lake into the river and the rain constantly replenishing the lake, at this rate, we are never going to drain Lake Michigan. Yay. All right, now off to our left, you're getting one of the best views on the tour. So I'm gonna pause the narration for a moment, get some photos, and then once we're turned around, headed back, I'll get back to the tour.
Đứng đây mà bắt chụp hình. Ai đâu xì vậy? Mày đã hả? Hay này. Take out a photo.
Right though. All right, let's talk more. That's all right. Looks like some of you got some pretty good photos. So for now, let's get back to this narration. On the right side, you might have been seeing this big Ferris wheel and wondering what that's about. That's part of Navy Pier, one of the top attractions in Chicago. It's competing constantly for the #1 attraction spot with another attraction in Chicago that's called Cloud Gate, but it's a sculpture that we all call the Bean, of course. The Bean is reopened after remodeling, so you can go there today if you'd like. Or you can go to Navy Pier, because honestly, this Ferris wheel is pretty cool. But it may not quite be as cool as the Ferris wheel it's built to commemorate the first ever Ferris wheel, which was actually built here in Chicago in 1893 for our World's Fair.
Walking.
The first ever Ferris
Okay,
wheel,
Joke,
when it was built in
Joke.
Chicago, it was nearly twice as tall as that Ferris wheel there. And every single car could hold not 2, not 4, but 60 people. Because every car was a train car, and every car had its own bar. And a bartender. Yeah. And one of those cars was open for an orchestra that would get on the Ferris wheel and would play the whole time the Ferris wheel went around. Because they didn't have speakers in 1893. So it was a pretty swanky Ferris wheel. Now, if we keep looking off to our right, we'll see a tower all by itself. That is Lake Point Tower. Lake Point Tower is all by itself because it actually committed a crime. What crime do you think that building committed? Yeah, building on this side of this road. This road behind me is Lakeshore Drive. And there's a law in Chicago saying you can't build on the lakefront, so nothing east of Lakeshore Drive. But look at them. They built east of Lakeshore Drive. When they were building that building in the 1970s, we said, hey, what are you guys doing? And they said, now look, this land was not filled in yet when you made the law saying you couldn't build on the lakefront. Since this land was not here yet, when you made that law couldn't apply to this land. So they were building on the lakefront. We made a new law after that that said, you definitely can't build on the lakefront, Chicago. But they were already building, so they were allowed to finish. And now, Lake Point Tower stands all alone forever in time out for its crimes. All right, here's a fun story. This bridge that we just went under, someone used to live inside it. There was a man who found a hole in the middle of the lanes of traffic on Lakeshore Drive Bridge, and he went through that hole and found a 5-foot-tall area of space that he said was his new apartment. He got a very long extension cord and a 20-inch TV. He brought the TV into that room, but every time that bridge went up, his apartment became vertical. So he put the TV on the wall that became the floor, and he bungee corded all his other stuff to the ground. And he lived in there for a year until they caught him because he hosted a Super Bowl party. Amazing, right? Yes. So that's a true story that happened in the early 2000s. All right, off to our left, directionally challenged, off to our right. There's a big yellow crane, and that's very exciting because that means they're finally doing some work on that lot next to Lakeshore Drive. Back in the early to mid 2000s, they were going to build the tallest building in Chicago there. It was going to be called the Spire. They dug a big hole, getting ready to build it, and then the 2008 recession hit and the project fell apart. So there was just a huge hole there from 2008 until this year. They fell in that hole, and now they're going to build 2 new residential towers right there on the edge of our skyline. So look for those in the next couple of years. For now, left side, you're probably able to see the flow-through up on the St. Regis Tower pretty clearly. Fun fact, just above that flow-through, guess what pop icon used to own the penthouse? Lady Gaga. Yeah, Lady Gaga, she used to live at the top of the St. Regis Tower. Pretty cool, right? If you want a penthouse in Chicago, let me tell you, there's one for sale. It's on the top of the Trump Tower, and it's only going to cost you $30 million. So save up if you want a penthouse in Chicago. All right, now off to our right, we're passing the Sheraton Hotel again, right side if you didn't get to see it. It's got that ballroom that seats 5,000 people. To our left, you can see a building that's in the shape of a triangle. This building was designed by Harry Weiss. He loves sailing. Look at how that building looks like the bow of a ship coming right towards us. His love of sailing comes out in everything he does. Just behind it, you can see the wavy aqua building that looks like water cascading down the side. All right, now right side, let's look for another hotel. Let's look ahead of us, just off the right of our bow. We're looking for a building with a white there it is, that's the Hotel Intercontinental. It was built in the 1920s, and look at that pedestal right on top of the dome. That, they said, was for docking blimps. They said, hey, it's the 1920s and soon everyone will ride in blimps. But they must have forgot that in 1919, a terrible blimp disaster happened in Chicago where a blimp exploded over downtown. So no one wanted to ride in a blimp, and they've never docked a blimp there. All right, now if we're still looking to the right, we are passing the NBC Tower. It's the one with those bold vertical lines. A lot of parts of it are set back. The NBC Tower is based off the designs for the NBC Tower in New York at Rockefeller Center, so if it looks familiar, that's why. We're still looking to the right. You'll see a building with no windows on its left side. That's the University of Chicago's Gleacher Center, and the place with no windows is the classrooms. Dirk Lohan got a lot of negative feedback about that one, but he said students shouldn't be looking out those windows. They ought to be looking at their teachers. That university has produced 99 Nobel Prize winners. I don't know. I'm just an architecture tour guide. If we keep looking to the right, we'll see a building with a bunch of windows. That building is the Apple Store. Look how flat its roof is. This building is in a new style of architecture we get to learn. You ready? It's called the Prairie style. When you think of a prairie, what's its main characteristic? It's really flat, right? So this is a very flat style. Frank Lloyd Wright, he loves to build in this style. And so does Sir Norman Foster, who built the Apple Store. The Apple Store had its roof so flat that the roof looked like an Apple iPad, they thought. So they put an Apple logo on top. But then Sir Norman Foster said, that's not part of my design, so 4 hours later they had to scrape it back off. Oh man, architecture can be a little dramatic sometimes.
Oh my god.
All right, now, off to our right, we are passing a building whose name you could probably guess. That is the Trump International Hotel and Tower. It's the second tallest building in Chicago, but fun fact, it's designed by architect Adrian Smith, who designed the tallest building in the world. Pop quiz, what's the tallest building in the world? Yeah, you guys knew it, it's the Burj Khalifa. It's out in Dubai. How tall is it? Well, look at the top of Trump Tower and imagine another Trump Tower on top. It is very tall. Alrighty, now, let me set the scene for our next building. Look to your left, the London Guarantee and Accident Building. That was built in the 1920s. That was kind of what our city looked like back then. When suddenly, in the 1930s, a new style of architecture came over from Germany. So in Germany, there was the Bauhaus School of Architecture. They were teaching architects in the international style. This style to your right. Now, today this style may look like a big black box to you, leading to its nickname, Black Box Modernism. But this style, actually when it came over from Germany, becoming international, the international style was revolutionary. Men like Mies van der Rohe, who designed this building, they said less is more, simplicity is key. When we're building big buildings like the London Guarantee and Accident Building, first they're big steel grids, and then we cover them with stone. Why should we cover them? We should make it obvious what a building is, a big steel grid. And so we got buildings like that one. Now, Mies van der Rohe, he would teach his style of architecture at the Illinois Institute of Technology, and one of his students would totally disagree with his whole philosophy. Bertrand Goldberg, who built these buildings to our right, Marina City Towers. He said, okay, Mies, building big black boxes is nice, but I say there's no right angles in nature, so I'm not going to put any in my architecture. So he designed Marina City Towers in the 1960s, and they're so wavy that Chicagoans call them the corn cobs. You know, we're desperately Midwestern, so those are our corn cobs. Now up to our left, here's a new style of architecture. You ready? It's called brutalism. If you look at this building with the big 55 on the top, it's 55 West Wacker. That building's in the style of brutalism, but not because it looks like it's gonna, you know, beat you up or brutalize you. It's because that building is béton brut, which is French for raw concrete. It's a raw concrete building, béton brut, brutalism. We're passing on the right a building with RPM Seafood, Pizzeria Portofino on the outside. That building is the American Bar Association's building. So about 250 lawyers practice law there and eat seafood and pizza. Sounds like a good workplace. To our right, here's a fun little building. It was built in 1914 as a warehouse for the Monarch Foods Company. Now back then, when our river was super nasty, I said no one was living here. This is mostly what our river looked like. We had a lot of warehouses like this one, a lot of similar factories, most of them built with bricks, because bricks are made of clay. And guess what's at the bottom of this river? Clay, exactly. As we were rebuilding Chicago, we were grabbing local materials. Clay from our very own river, and limestone from our neighboring state of Indiana, which you can see at the bottom of this building to your left. This is the Builders Building. The Builders Building was partially built in the 1920s in a style that we already know. Look at those Greek columns around the bottom, lots of intricate stonework. That building is in the French style of Beaux-Arts, yes indeed. But on the right it changes because it was added onto in the 80s. So that building kind of represents 60 years worth of change in architecture, all in one, the Builders Building. To the right, you can see the Merchandise Mart. The Merchandise Mart, when it was built, was the biggest concrete building in the world. This building is a great example of Art Deco. All right, new architecture style. Art Deco came about in the 1920s. It emphasizes bold vertical lines, lots of big geometric designs. Look at these diamonds everywhere. And up at the top, you can see parts of the building are set back from the rest. You know what that's called? A setback. We're great at naming things. All right, so this building, bold vertical lines, parts of it set back. That's the style of Art Deco. That building, when it was built, was a warehouse for the Marshall Fields Catalog Company. So, you know, you have a catalog, you have to ship out a bunch of stuff, you have to store that stuff somewhere, and they stored it there. Today, that's a building that houses 500 showrooms for the merchandise and the tech industry. So basically, I don't get to shop there, but the shops I shop at could shop there. It's become a shop for shops to shop. Off to our right, we're passing Wolf Point. Wolf Point has 3 towers on it. On the right here, this is Wolf Point East. In the middle there, that's Salesforce Tower. And just behind Salesforce Tower is Wolf Point West. But what I really want to talk about is that little slice of land there, because Wolf Point is where we got our name. We had our first 3 taverns there, and in them, Native Americans that lived here were talking to the Chicago settlers, and the Native Americans were calling this area Chicago. We said, that sounds awesome. We're going to name our city after that, Chicago. But you know what Chicago meant? Smelly onions. We named the whole dang city after smelly onions, and that's because we are built partially on a swamp. And what grew in that swamp? Smelly onions. So that's how we get our name. Now we're also, of course, built on a prairie, and we've learned that the prairie is flat, so it's great for building railroads. Chicago was actually one of the railway capitals of North America during the Industrial Revolution. And these railways, although they presented opportunity, also presented some problems. Look to your right. You'll see 150 North Riverside, which could not build a full foundation because on this side they had the river, and on the other side they had trains running underneath the sidewalk. So they had to build on a foundation as wide as this boat. How did they build a building that tall on a base that skinny? Well, they used a water sloshing mass damper system. What this means is inside the top of that building, there are 4 giant tanks of water that together hold 160,000 gallons. And every time the wind blows the building in one direction, the water sloshes in the other direction, and it counteracts the swaying of the building in the wind. Pretty interesting. But in my opinion, it's not the wildest thing that architects have done on this side of the river to avoid those trains. To our right, this is 100 North Riverside. And on the south end of this building, they could not build a foundation at all because there are giant switch tracks underneath the sidewalk. So right now we're facing south. So on the south end of this building, 5 of the pillars connect to something on the roof. Take a look. When we come out under this next bridge, I want you to look back at that part of the roof, and what you'll see is giant X's. They're called trusses. They are fully suspending the south end of that building from the top of the building. In theory, you could dig under the south end of that building and you can wave your hand right underneath it because there's no foundation holding it up. It's actually all hanging off of those trusses that you can see up on the top. Pretty wild. All right, now left side, you're seeing a pretty cool building. This building was built in the 1920s. It's the Civic Opera Building. And it's got some Beaux-Arts architecture. See these triangular pediment roofs, those are very Greek. We've also got some bold vertical lines, that's very Art Deco. This is kind of a blending of the two styles. That building is housed for about 100 years. When we come back, I'll tell you a story about that building. But for now, look to the right. Doesn't this building look familiar? Do we remember what style from Germany this is? International, exactly. You might know it better by its nickname, Black Box Modernism, because, you know, it's a big black box. And underneath it, well, you can hear these trains, and aren't they loud? Those trains are so loud that Gateway Center 1, just above them, had to be well insulated. Someone who works in that building told me, inside the building, you can't hear the trains anywhere, except one bathroom on the 16th floor. He has no idea why you can hear the trains in there. I don't either. But you can't hear them anywhere else in the building because it's so well insulated. Now, Gateway Center 1 and Gateway Center 2, they were designed by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, the architecture firm. And many of those architects probably took some inspiration from our guy, Mies van der Rohe, who built in this style. We saw his work earlier. We were seeing a lot of his influence since he was teaching at the Illinois Institute of Technology, teaching architecture to a generation of architects who then went out into Chicago and built big black boxes, you know? So around the 1970s, I think we had gotten tired of all these big black boxes we were building, and so we said, hey, let's build a big white box. So Gateway Center 3, just ahead of us to the right, is our big white box. So we clad this one with white concrete so it looked a little bit different than what we had been building in the 60s. And now I think we had realized we've conquered boxes, right? We built white ones and black ones. Now it's time for us to think outside the box. This is when, in the 1980s, we get a style known as contextualism. So think about what context means. It means your surroundings, right? So the surroundings of these buildings, well, that's the river. If you look just ahead of us to the right, you'll see a building that curves with the river because it's in the style of contextualism. Its context is the river curves, the building curves because the river is its context and it's in the style of... Yeah, you guys got it. Contextualism. All right. Now as we're turning, you're gonna see it. It's about to be ahead of us. It is the tallest building in Chicago. It stands at 1,454 feet tall with two wide antennas that don't count in the height. They're 300 feet tall each. And that building is the Sears, yeah, or the Willis Tower. All right, so the Willis Insurance Agency technically owns the naming rights to the building. Who are they? They insured the Titanic. So yeah, I think they got tired of having a big boat and they said, let's have a big building. So here it is. Today, Chicagoans, true Chicagoans, still call it the Sears Tower. Yes, the Sears Tower was built for Sears Roebuck in 1973. And at that time, it was the tallest building in the world. And it would remain that way for about 20 years into the 90s. So the question posed to Dr. Fazler Khan, the structural engineer, and architect Bruce Graham is, how are we going to build the tallest building in the world on a swamp like Chicago? Here's how. To build up that tall, you first got to dig down. Because in Chicago, there's a layer of soil, and then a layer of clay, and then a layer of hard pan, which is hardened clay, and then there's bedrock. And the bedrock is super sturdy. So to get to the bedrock, they had to dig 80 feet through the soil and the clay. And then they hit the bedrock, and they dug 60-foot deep holes in the bedrock to plant what's called caissons. Basically, you take a big hunk of a metal like rebar, you put it into that big hole you dug, you pour in some concrete to keep that rebar steady, and that becomes the legs of the building, cemented in bedrock, very sturdy. You build the building around that, but even that was not enough. So Bruce Graham sat down with Fazler Khan, and he pulled out a pack of cigarettes, And he said, here's how we'll build the tallest building in the world. He pulled up one cigarette and then other cigarettes around it because his idea was if you stick a single stick in the ground, you can push it over easily. It's not sturdy. But if you stick a stick in the ground, surround it with smaller sticks, bundle them all together, it becomes a lot sturdier. And that's what they used to build the Sears Tower. If you catch another glimpse of it, it's not one tower, it's 9 towers bundled together. That's called bundled tubular construction. And it's how you build the tallest building in the world on the swamp. Pretty neat. Now, sometimes architects aren't dealing with monumental problems like building the tallest building in the world on a swamp. Sometimes architects and structural engineers have smaller problems, like at the Mercantile Exchange to our right, where everyone wanted a corner office. And you can see their solution was to make more corners. Easy fix. Every single floor has 16 corner offices now, and everybody gets one. Left side, we just passed Gateway Center 1 and 2, those big black boxes. A fun fact about those is they are the exact height of the shortest antenna on top of the Sears Tower, 300 feet tall. Pretty big. If you're still looking left, you'll see 2 North Riverside Plaza, the first building built atop the railways on this side of the river. 2 North Riverside Plaza opened as Chicago's first public plaza during the Great Depression. You could come here and catch a free concert, which was great because everyone was really depressed, you know? They were coming here to lift their spirits. And they were coming here to our right, to the Civic Opera Building to watch the opera. I told you I'd give you a story here. The Civic Opera Building was funded with money from a man named Samuel Insull. He was a stock trader. And it said he had a secret girlfriend who did not make it out in New York. She was an opera singer. When she didn't make it in New York, it said that Samuel designed that building for her. But then she came here and she didn't make it in Chicago either. And then the stock market crashed and Samuel Insull lost it all. So the moral of that story is make sure you have a backup plan. If that's one thing you can take away from this, it's a good lesson. Off to our right, we're passing a building that was built in the 80s, but my favorite thing about it is from the 50s. Look down near the river and you'll see wavy silver panels. There used to be a building built there that had wavy silver panels on the outside, but it was demolished in the 1980s to build that building. But Gush and Partners, the architects, they liked those wavy silver panels so much that as they demolished the building, they kept them and they used them to decorate the bottom of their building, which is a nice way that architects, you know, kind of pay respects to other architects. Left side, you can now see the very skinny base that 150 North Riverside is built on. Hey, and you can hear one of these trains behind me. This is our L train. Our L train was expanded during the 1893 World's Fair so that people could get around the city as they came to visit the fair. Off to our right side, we're passing a historic spot, a spot where the Wigwam used to be. The Wigwam in 1860 was built to house the 1860 Republican National Convention, where a young lawyer would receive the 1860 presidential nomination. Do you know who that young lawyer was? Abraham Lincoln got his presidential nomination just behind us off to the right. Pretty neat. To the left, you can see a building with a big arch. That building is River Point. In front of it is Constellation, a sculpture by Santiago Calatrava. Now that building curves with the river. And look at this building to the right from the 80s. It curves with the river because the river is its context and it's in the style of contextualism. Yes, indeed. The building to our right is 333 West Wacker, but you might know it better as Ferris Bueller's dad's office, because that's actually where he works in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Right in front of that building is the start of our beautiful river walk. You can come down here and sit in these chairs after the tour if you want. And this is a spot where you can start and you can walk 1.3 miles straight down to the lake. And that is largely thanks to this guy named Montgomery Ward. Montgomery Ward was one of the owners of these big catalog companies that we had in our city. So he was very rich. And he started spending his money suing people who were building on the riverfront and the lakefront in Chicago. He said, no, the riverfront and the lakefront should be open and available for the people of Chicago to enjoy. And largely thanks to his efforts, we now have a fully public river walk and you can't build on the lakefront. unless you're like Point Tower, in which case you're all alone forever. Off to the left, you can see Montgomery Ward's head. These heads on top of these pedestals here are the heads of those big catalog companies that were here in Chicago. Sears, Roebuck, Marshall Fields, J.C. Penney, Montgomery Ward. They're all represented here in head form, watching the Merchandise Mart, and every night at 8:30 p.m. they get a free show, and you can too. Tonight at 8:30, they're going to do something called Art on the Mart, where they take this giant bank of projectors to our right, and they project art, guess where? On the Merchandise Mart. And you can see that tonight for free. Pretty cool. Now, the place where they project it from is off to our right. It's called the Jetty. This is a place that has these green boxes of plants that are floating. Those are called fish hotels. Fish come here, they lay their eggs, the fish hatch, and then from those fish hotels, fish start swimming out, and the Park District teaches Chicagoans how to catch them. Nice little fishing spot there off the Jetty. Now here we go under another one of our beautiful drawbridges. Chicago has 37 drawbridges across the lake that all open in the middle. These bridges are called bascule trunnion bridges, meaning they open in the middle with the help of counterweights on either side. Right side, you're seeing the Builders Building now. It's that building we talked about earlier, with the left side built on the 1920s and the right side built in the 1980s. Left side, here's a building that has Chicago Cut Steakhouse on the outside. That building has actually received a platinum certification in LEED, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. That building is super environmentally friendly. It's cooled not with traditional AC, it uses river water to cool the entire building. Pretty cool. Alrighty, now left side you're about to see one of those warehouses that we've been talking about that used to be all along our river. To our left, built in 1914. This Monarch Foods warehouse, fun fact, has one of the original Otis elevators inside it. And that's pretty exciting because Elijah Otis, the inventor of the safety brake on elevators, is a big part of the reason why we're able to use them in skyscrapers today, allowing buildings to be a lot taller than they used to be. Okay, off to our right, we've got a building where the middle is set all the way back and the rest of it has bold vertical lines. What style is that? Art Deco, you guys got it. Art Deco came about in the 1920s when a law was made saying if your building is a certain height, part of it needs to be set back to allow more natural light to get into our city. Another great reason to create a setback like that is that building has two arms kind of coming off the center, and you can open windows on either side of those little arms coming off. And that was awesome because you needed a cross breeze back then when they didn't have what? Air conditioning. You better believe it. On a day like today, you would be wanting that cross breeze. Now, just ahead of us to the left, I'm going to tell you a lot more about Marina City Towers because it's one of my favorite spots in Chicago. Marina City Towers, when they were built, they were the first residential buildings built on the river since the days when we reversed it. So the river was getting cleaner, people now wanted to live here, but there was not infrastructure for them. No one lived down here, so there were no grocery stores, there were no movie theaters. So Marina City Towers, they were built with all of that inside. Just behind this first tower on the left, you'll see a building with a sloped roof. Today it's the House of Blues, but it was once their movie theater. Just behind that is a building with vertical lines. That is today the Chicago Hotel, but it used to be their office building. Down here, Smith & Wollensky was once their roller rink. They also had their own grocery stores and their own child care, all in one. A city within a city, and their own marina, of course. Alrighty, now, just ahead of us, off to the right, we're about to see a building topped with gold, real gold. This building is the Carbide and Carbon Building. The Carbide and Carbon Building is an Art Deco style building that was built in 1929 at the height of Prohibition in America, a time when we were not supposed to drink. So we modeled that building after a champagne bottle because we were in Champagne. And if you keep looking to the right, you'll see a building that is tan. It is in the Beaux-Arts style. It has 4 domes in the middle and 1 dome at the top. It's the Jewelers Building. It was built in 1926 for jewelers to have their offices inside. So imagine that you're a jeweler. It's 1926. You have to get to your office in that building, but when you step out onto the streets with bags of jewels in each hand, what's going to happen to you? You're going to be robbed. So to keep these jewelers safe, they put a car elevator in that building. You could drive into it, go up in your car, get out, go to your office, and you never set foot on the streets, making it nice and safe. And fun fact, those domes in the middle of the building, they were supposed to hold giant tanks of water, making the building even more safe. In case of fire, they could have broken those tanks of water and doused the building in water to keep it from catching on fire. All right, and now we're steadily coming into our dock. So if you have an alcoholic beverage, you need to play chug it or chuck it, because you must drink it or you must leave it in the trash can as you get off the boat. You can't take it with you. Are you guys ready to learn about one last building? Yeah, let's do it. Just ahead of us, we've got the Wrigley Building. The Wrigley Building has some Beaux-Arts style to it. It's also known as Spanish Colonial Revival, just because it's based off of a lot of cathedrals out in Seville, Spain. This building is built with white terracotta on the outside. Terracotta was a great material for us to rebuild after the Great Fire because it was fire resistance. Yes, and it was made of clay. Where did we get that clay? The bottom of the river, indeed. All right, and now you know a bunch about architecture. Now, my name is Jake. I'm wearing a white flowy pirate shirt. I'm going to be down at the end of this ramp as you get off the boat. If you have a question that I didn't get to answer, come ask me your question. I will also be down there if you want to give me a fist bump. If you want to pass along feedback or what have you, that's much appreciated. I'll be down there for all of that. And now it's time to see if we accomplished our goal. Look around you. Yell out a style of architecture you can see from here. What have we got? Black box modernism, that's one. Art Deco, that's two. Beaux-Arts, that's three. What is it? What's it called? One more time? Whatchamacallit? Oh yeah, that's four. No, I'm just kidding. But we accomplished our goal. Art Deco, Beaux-Arts, and Black Box Modernism. That's three styles of architecture you can name from here. And the fourth style, which we didn't really learn of, whatchamacallit. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming and accomplishing our architecture goals. Have a great time in Chicago, everybody. Enjoy your day.